Hello everybody, E here. Welcome back to another Stephen King Theorist video. Today we are doing things a little bit different because we're not talking about Stephen King. We are talking about his son Joe Hill and his book King Sorrow. Here I am going to attempt to connect not only it, but the Dark Tower to King Sorrow. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to address people who have been waiting for this video. Most of you went on the roller coaster ride that was my updates on my shorts feed. As I was reading along, I was at first, in the first couple ones, that's why I'm leaving them up. I believe it's important to show these things. Right off the bat, I was very disappointed in Joe Hill. I was very disappointed that he wasn't being his own man, that he wasn't doing his own thing. But slowly, and you can watch this happen on those shorts, if you watch them in order, slowly I began to see something. Something that I didn't see in The Fireman, his previous novel. His previous novel is just The Stand with a shiny new coat of paint. I mean, he literally names some of the characters. There's a deaf character named Nick. There's a character named Franny. There's so much in that. But he didn't do anything new with the Stephen King mythos. He was just writing a cover song. This time, I thought that's exactly what he was doing again, especially when I got to a point where he referenced the opening line of the Dark Tower series. And we're going to get to all of that. I started doing those updates, and people in the comments were like, oh, so you mentioned his dad a couple times. This isn't a couple of times, folks. This is 15 pages worth of notes that I have condensed into about 8 of these pages, swipeable pages. And those are the notes that I am going off of. I had a lot of feelings and a lot of thoughts as I was reading, so I took my time. And I slowed down. I know I was doing 100 pages a day, but I was also reading it at work. I was reading it every single moment that I could. And since then, I have listened to the audiobook as well. Thank you, Katie, for taking care of the audiobook of that. Also, I have a book haul from Katie coming up. I really need to stress that if it was not for Katie, you probably would not be getting this video anytime soon, because I like to read a book at least twice before I do a Theorist. That's read it once and do the Audible next. I will say I didn't care for the Audible. I don't like full casts. I don't like sound effects. I just want one person to read the story, maybe 2 people. It can go back and forth. I don't like a full cast production. I'm not that type of reader. So I did not enjoy the audiobook, but it did help me catch some things that I might not have caught otherwise. So to recap, the reason why I didn't like The Fireman is because it was an Easter egg fest that did not expand on Stephen King's lore. In this one, he expands on Stephen King's lore, and he gives some answers to the things that myself, as a Stephen King nut scholar, whatever the hell you want to call me, myself appreciated, because I had these questions. It's like, these entities feed off fear, but why? You know, what is the backstory of these creatures, so on and so forth. And I got what I wanted if you read deeply and take some literary license. But first and foremost, we're going to go through all of the connections that are a hard connection. He mentions his dad a lot. I mean, it is literally probably... Now, hang on, not literally. I would say it's about once, at least every 25 pages, he references his family. Whether that be Tabitha King, Owen King, Kelly Braffett. Kelly Braffett is Owen King's wife. She is also a novelist. Whether it be himself, whether it be his father, Stephen King, he's always referencing somebody. He also references a bunch of his friends. Bracken McLeod. There's a lot. We'll get to all that stuff. But right off the bat, I am working off of the first edition US hardcover of the book. It looks like this, of King Sorrow. It is 880 pages. It's a little bit over that with the afterword, but it's around 880 pages. I will be giving you the page number if you want to see for yourself, because certain people did not believe that I could possibly have 15 pages of notes, and here I am to prove them wrong. Alright, so on page 42, Hill references Greg Stilson and Johnny Smith from the Dead Zone. In that one little section on page 42, Joe Hill spoils the Dead Zone. By the way, this entire video, if you haven't already figured it out, is going to be full of spoilers. But Joe Hill did this for one of his father's books. He literally tells the end of the Dead Zone. Spoiler alert for the Dead Zone. Johnny Smith is there to assassinate I believe it's the what are they called? Not elected, not president-elect, but he's campaigning for president. So Johnny Smith is there to assassinate Greg Stilson before he can become president, because he's psychic and he can see everything that's going to go wrong. At that point in time, Greg Stilson sees him after Johnny's already shot once. He picks up a kid, holds the kid in front of him, and everybody's like, hell no, that's terrible. That only works for Elon Musk. So I found it strange that he would spoil one of his dad's books, a beloved book too, a very cherished book. It's about every week I get somebody on either my review of the Dead Zone, because I'm not a big fan of it after the serial killer dies, after Dodd dies. I'm not a big fan of the rest of the book. I could care less about that political stuff. But Stephen King just became political, y'all. Just remember that. So I'm not a fan of the book. So people are constantly saying, oh, this is my favorite Stephen King book. So it's a beloved book. It's not just a toss-off. This isn't Cell. This isn't From a Buick 8. This is the Dead Zone. What's his? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. His 5th published book. Now, so that's on page 42. Once again, I'm doing the U.S. first edition hardcover. On page 43, there is a mention of a covert agency called Division 19. If you don't know, in over here in the Dark Tower series, the number 19 is very important. It is the exact number of the letters in Stephen King's name, I believe. It's in so many things. I believe it's his birthday, September 19th. I could be wrong about that, but the 19 is important. He says it in the Dark Tower series, so Division 19, obviously, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, we're talking about the shop. The shop, as in, from Firestarter, that goes after Charlie McGee and her father. So I'm thinking already also The Mist, so many more. It's mentioned in the Dark Tower series. It's mentioned all over the place. It's a covert government operation called the shop. You hear about it all the time. Now, but in this one, Division 19, he eventually does mention the shop by name later on in the book, but right now we're at page 43, Division 19. Page 85. I'm going to read this. This one's funny to me because I know this stuff. Anyways, I think it's public knowledge now, but it wasn't a couple years ago. So if you don't know who Scott Carson is, Scott Carson is a horror author. It is also the horror pen name of another author named Michael Corrida. I believe it's Corrida. On page 85, this is the first name drop that Hill does. Page 85, Hill mentions a character named Scott Carson. Scott Carson is the horror pen name of thriller author Michael Corrida. The Chill by Scott Carson, was a new take on The Shining, with a dam instead of a hotel. I read that one. I got an ARC for it. I got an ARC for it. I really loved it. It was really good, but I remember there being a lot of references to The Shining in that one. Corrida also blurbed this book, and I can only assume from this knowledge that they are friends. And I'm assuming that, and as you get farther on into the book, you're probably gonna see some other names that you'll know as well. Let me take a drink. smooth. Y'all like my cup? I've been thinking about putting it in the background when I like, if it's a positive review or if it's a negative review. Let me know if y'all want me to do that down there in the doobly-doo. Otherwise, you can just be surprised. All right, so now we are jumping to page 95. A Navajo sweat lodge is mentioned, and you're going to see a lot of references to Stephen King's It. Or similarities here. So a Navajo sweat lodge is mentioned. We can only we can only piece these things together. The ritual of Chud. I can't remember what the indigenous tribe is in It. I don't think it's mentioned, but I believe in the new movie in the series it's the Shapapiwa. Once again, could be completely wrong about that. I didn't do my due diligence as far as that was concerned. So that's page 95, Navajo sweat lodge. Page 100. The long dark sounds like explaining the prim, or whatever he calls it in NOS 4A2. Inscapes, I believe, is what it's called. He talks about it in the same place that he mentions Midworld and Pennywise. So in Nosferatu, he mentions Midworld, and he mentions Pennywise, the clown. Both of those things, and it's like on a map of like, not Midworld, but it's like it's the inscapes that they travel. I really need to reread Nosferatu, NOS 4A2. I really need to reread that one because I have a feeling that this one ties in quite a bit also. If y'all want to see a full-blown Joe Hill Theorist where I connect all these books, let me know that down in the doobly-doo, but I got a long way to go before I get done with the short stories that I'm doing right now. I'm doing all of Stephen King's short stories. I'm doing a theory video for each and every one of them, and he's got hundreds of stories. So you're looking at hundreds of Thursdays to go. All right, so here is my theory about the long dark and the prim. The prim is the outside of it's like the darkness that surrounds Midworld in the Dark Tower, and this is where all of the monsters and the creatures and things come from. I'm positive that the long dark is the prim. And why am I positive? Because Stephen King has long said that Midworld is an amalgamation of all story, of all literature, of just the celebration of story and the imagination. The darkness on the outside is where the monsters hide. So you have, in this book, in King Sorrow, you have a group of people summoning something from the long dark, your subconscious, summoning it from the long dark into the world and making it real through literally just the power of imagination. So my theory here is that the prim is the long dark is the prim. So on page 103, we find out that King Sorrow eats fear and pain. That it's fear and pain make us taste better. Does anybody else... Does that sound like anybody else? Of course it sounds like Pennywise the Clown or the entity known as It. Also, in that same area where they're explaining what feeds King Sorrow, you have Van say, "How do we get this clown show started?" That's a direct quote from the book, and it says, "How do we get this clown show started?" asked Van. I thought that was it's a little bit on the nose, but hey, you know, beep beep, Richie. Alright, so that was page 103. On page 107, they're coming in fast and hot now. On page 107, a golden eye stained red like Pennywise and the Deadlights. A golden eye is very much like an eclipse. And I couldn't help but think of Gerald's Game and Gerald's Game and Dolores Claiborne, how they both take place during an eclipse, and how the two women see each other, have visions of each other. I'm wondering if the Deadlights themselves are a thinny. It's so the Deadlights aren't necessarily it. Could the Deadlights be the thinny where he travels in and out? Could it be? I don't know. But we do know that the entity known as It was trapped here on Earth, and he ended up being trapped in the shape of a spider. But I thought that was very interesting. I wanted to bring that up. Now we got this nonsense. I still don't know why Hill did this 3 times. This is revolving around, this involves, not revolves, this one involves an update that I made on my shorts, and in the captions I just said oof, OOF, because I couldn't believe he did it once, much less 3 times. In 3 pages, 3 separate pages. On page 109, the dark man fled across the snow, and Arthur Oakes followed. And in case you didn't get it that time, on page 110, the very next page, he writes it again. The dark man fled across the white desert, and Arthur followed. And in case you missed the first 2, this is the only one I'm going to do this with because I thought it was hella silly, is on page 111, just the very next page, we have the dark man fled across the cold desert, and Arthur Oakes followed. There you have it. Next up, we have a quote from Clive Barker's Books of Blood. Wherever we're opened, we're read. So he gives a shout out to Clive Barker on page 123. Okay, then moving on page 147, we have Jane Nicewander's hair turning white like Bowers in It. And of course, Jane Nicewander, or is it Daphne? Whoever the mother, it's one, whoever's hair turned white. It was from terror because they kept getting harassed and tormented by King Sorrow. While at the same time, the mother, Daphne, I believe is her name. Daphne, I misspoke in my spoiler review. But Daphne ends up doing the whole Henry Bowers shtick. The entire shtick. Gets out of prison, ends up hunting down the Losers Club, or the Get Even Club as it's known in this one. Ends up hunting them down, and of course shooting Donna and Gwen and all that stuff that happens there. So obvious allusion to Henry Bowers. Y'all, we are only 147 pages in, and we already got how many references? This is mad, and I'm not even halfway done. On page 170, finally we go 30 pages without a mention. Hill mentions Bracken McLeod, another author friend, and the Katrina Ward, or Catriona Ward, and Sarah Pinners, aka Pinbro. I said that's a lot of references. Literally all of those people are on the same page. Now he does slightly change their names, but you know who they're supposed to be. They've all blurbed each other. They all, it's a buddy system. I know Joe Hill and Catriona Ward were in like the Shivers collection, I believe. Bracken McLeod, I'm almost positive they're friends, that I knew that beforehand. But anyways, so 3 friends all mentioned on page 170 on a single page. Now on page 234, the library police, as in the library policeman, another one for his dad. I didn't actually go through and count how many references there were, but I did note every single time I caught one. So page 234, the library police. On page 256, the shop is finally confirmed as Division 19. So on page 256, he finally calls it the shop instead of Division 19. On page 297, he mentions Eyes of the Dragon, and while you're saying, this is of course a book about a dragon, we're going to hear about the Eyes of the Dragon. It's still a title of Stephen King's book, and it is mentioned twice in one paragraph. Now, here we go. On page 340, Allie has this to say. Who said they are of this earth? Maybe they come from somewhere else. And I said the prim, duh. But, the long dark being the prim, so on and so forth. Now, on page 370, Hill finally references his own works. And I think this is a reference, or else it's very weird that he used this in 2 different things. On page 370, Hill has a thing for agents named after musicians. In his short story Ushers, it was a play on Hall and Oates, who were mentioned here too. But this time, it's Simon and Garfunkel. I think it's Simon and Garfinkel or something like that, something silly. But if you've read his short story Ushers, he does the exact same thing in Ushers as he does here. Hall and Oates versus Simon and Garfunkel. Now, Here we go. Here's one that I know I'm gonna get hit with this one. Everybody's gonna be like, "But it's just some numbers, brother." I don't think so, because Stephen King has been adding up numbers to say things ever since he started, whether it be 19 or as in with what is it 1403 room 1403. I think it is. Anyways, 1408. Sorry, 1408. And if you add 1 plus 5. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 0 plus 8 is 13, because no hotel has a 13th floor or 13th room. At least they didn't used to. Okay, sorry about that. I'm having some issues over here, but I'm going to finish this up before I go get checked out. Alright, so let's see here. We were at flight BA 238. So 38 divided by 2 is 19. Also, let's see here. 2 plus 3 plus 8 is 13. Unlucky flight. Either way you look at it, the numbers can be used to make the same numbers as 1408 or 19, which is from the Dark Tower. On page 398. So 398, he finally mentions one of his own books, Heart-Shaped Box. That is dropped. I can't remember the context of this one, but this one might be a little more of a reach, but he does mention the Heart-Shaped Box. I think he's actually referencing the Nirvana song, but at the same time, it is one of his books. On page 400, this one's important, and I really love the addition of the troll Stufinger. Stavanger, whatever his name is, Stu Finger or Stuart Finger, in the book. The troll is his name. Stuart Finger is the name of the troll, or Stu Finger. Arthur talks about finding a troll under a bridge. Stephen King got the idea for it while on a bridge, and he remembered the story The Three Billy Goats Gruff, and that's where the entire book, It. I always get backwards. The entire book of It came from, was the idea of the Three Billy Goats Gruff and a troll living under the bridge. If you don't know, it is the goats, or Billy Goats Gruff, start trip-trapping across the thing. It's almost like the Three Little Pigs story. The first one gets eaten, the second one gets eaten, and then the third one ends up winning. It's one of those morality tales, a fable kind of deal. Alright, now on page 409, he just comes out and mentions Inside View, but he's been doing this in his own world for quite some time. On 479, those of you who've read the Dark Tower series and a couple other ones, Hill mentions Quonset huts. Now, are Quonset huts a thing just in general? Yes, they are. But at the same time, they are mentioned here, and they are mentioned in the Dark Tower series. On page 485, Satan's Chariot. If you don't know, the ending of Needful Things. I don't want to really spoil too much, but the end of Needful Things has to do with Satan's chariot, or the devil's chariot, or whatever you want to call it. It is a chariot, and it's mentioned in that one. Next up is another friend. This is a friend that we have in common. I'm good friends with the director Josh Boone, and that's the only reason I caught this one. My friend Josh Boone is director of The Fault in Our Stars, most recently Colleen Hoover's Regretting You. He's mentioned, and Josh is from Little Rock, Arkansas, and in this one it is actually John Boone from Little Rock, Arkansas. But hey, Josh, Josh Boone is mentioned here. Josh Boone also did, I believe, an intro or something along those lines in the Letterhead Press version of Revival, because he was going to do it, Flanagan was going to do it, and I think Josh wrote a little piece in there why he wanted to make it. On page 556, I have to bring up these references every single time I see them. Someone says, no, I think it's in the narrative. He says, it was full dark, no stars. Full dark, no stars, of course, one of King's collections. On page 608, Hill finally explains why Pennywise needed to hibernate. He doesn't specifically say it, but by explaining why King Sorrow has to, he gives us a reason why Pennywise has to. And also, I've long said that 27-year cycle in it's not just 27 years. I think that's just the time that it spends terrorizing Derry. I think it's in other parts of the state, and I think it's actually every 9 years is when these creatures have to eat and whatnot. But with King Sorrow, it is literally every year. But there is a 9-year cycle too that's mentioned in this book. It's every year he has to eat on Easter, I believe it is. So we still ain't done. We still going. We're still going. I don't know how long we've been going because I've had to stop it and, check myself out and check some references and things like that. So, but we're getting there. Let's see here. On 6:11, he explains why kids can see Pennywise and why adults can't. To some extent, Stephen King talks about this in It. He does talk about why it's just the magic of childhood. They're unburdened with with life. They still believe in magic. And I believe the intro, not the intro, but the epigraph, he dedicated to his kids and told them never to stop believing in the magic. Something along those lines. On page 627, they move deeper into the landscape of fairy tale, not fairy tales, but fairy tale. And this is as they enter a tunnel that is very, very reminiscent of the portal in the book Fairy Tale. I mean, that one was a hard connect as far as I'm concerned. As they're traveling down the tunnel, same tunnel that they go down in Fairy Tale to get to that magical world, which is, of course, Midworld. Just like the territories are Midworld. Just like Hill's Inscapes are Midworld. It's all Midworld because it's all the land of imagination. Let's see here. On page 641, he literally references Danse Macabre, whatever it's called. This one is what I'm talking about. In case y'all don't know, it's I think King wrote a couple of essays, not a couple, a whole novel of essays on good horror movies or something like that. I've never read it. I don't read. I've only read one nonfiction King, and that's On Writing. If you guys want reviews of those, let me know. I'm not 100% interested in anything he does with baseball, but I'll also get to Facing the Crowd and Faithful if you want me to. I'm willing to take one for the team there. Anyways, on page 644, Hill says they have a heck of a band. And that was funny because the Stephen King story is they got a hell of a band. But I think the person who says that or thinks that, I don't think they cuss. I think that's why it's heck in this one. I thought that was funny. On page 646, he references Patrick Hochstetter's fridge full of porn. Literally, a fridge full of it. If you guys haven't read it, you're going to be like, what in the world is he talking about? But it's in there. Patrick Hochstetter is one of the victims of it, and he has a fridge full of magazines. But he references that. On this has nothing to do with Stephen King, but I thought it was funny. Page 653, but can it play Doom? If you find that reference, please if you find that reference and you know what it's referencing, you're my people. I love you. Video game nerds and readers. 654. Stuart Finger is literally a real troll. A real life troll who is also a troll on the internet. And in Hill's world, trolls, that's what they do. The trolls that we get on YouTube, we get on Twitter and all that stuff, Tony and them, I'm always referencing Tony and them, those are the trolls. Anytime I mention Tony and them, that's the trolls, because my very first bully that I can remember, his name was Tony. So Tony and them. So I call them all Tony, and it's hilarious when I call them Tony, they're like, who's Tony? Well, now you know. Anyways, so on page 658, Sly Shitkicker is a reference to Randall Flagg. And also, I had like this little bit, I think Elwood Hondo is Randall Flagg. I honestly do, and I think King Sorrow is dun 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 the Crimson King. I think it's all the same characters. I believe there's more I think there's more to my theory than that. But anyways, so on page 660, once again, he references for the fourth time. It is like 500 pages later, thank God. But for a fourth time, Hill references the gunslinger, and he says, "A dark man fled across it, and Arthur followed." Now, on page 666, literally page 666, he talks about the long dark and what it is and how it's imagination. You can bring things in, and this is what ties all my theories together as far as this is concerned, because this is what I wrote. The prim, aka the long dark, is in us all. We are all capable of summoning these terrors, these monsters. That's where the monsters reside, in the prim, or in the long dark, or in the subconscious. The unexplored wastelands of our mind. We first hear about the prim in the book The Wastelands. Now these aren't quotes, these are my thoughts as I'm reading this. The Dark Tower is about story. So of course Midworld is our imagination. It's inscapes. And the prim, the long dark, is our subconscious. I know I've already referenced that, but on page 666 there it feels like with him describing the long dark, that's exactly what he's describing is the prim. So on page 670, I said the goat video was so Pennywise, and what I mean by that is there's a troll, the troll that lives under the bridge. The troll grabs onto a goat in this video that's surfacing and going around. I love how everybody on the internet, the trolls and everything, were like, "Oh, that's definitely photoshopped, rada. That's After Effects, so on and so forth." Or you need to go back to work on After Effects, or whatever it said. It's actually kind of funny. But the troll latches on, bites onto the goat, and then shakes it like a terrier. And I thought, if you think about Pennywise, especially in It Chapter 1 and 2, that's pretty much what he does. And it's like a shark's movement, because a shark bites you and then shakes its head so that it literally saws through you. Every 9 years, here's another reference, the every 9 years thing comes on page 674. Every 9 years, Pennywise is every 27, or is he? I've already discussed what I'm talking about there, but to back up that theory, it's everything that's on page 674. On page 70, this one gave me a chuckle. Bill Hanscom, not Ben Hanscom, but Bill Hanscom. Let's see here. On page 756, he references Johnny Smith's gun. And Johnny Smith's gun is from the Dead Zone. But Colin owns it as like kind of like a really macabre, item. Just like the collector, what is his name, Judas Coin in a heart-shaped box. How he collected all this stuff and he ended up, buying a haunted, suit. A haunted suit off eBay. Well, Colin here, he bought Johnny Smith's gun. Let's see here. Page 807, we get back to heart-shaped box because Elwood Hondo has scratched out eyes, and that's exactly what the ghosts in heart-shaped box had, scratched out eyes. Also in heart-shaped box, at the end there's a door in the floor, very reminiscent of Drawing of the Three and just the doors period in the Dark Tower series. This one got me because this is a deep cut. This is a really deep cut. On page 820, Inez, a nurse named Inez is mentioned, and Richard Bachman's supposed wife, make-believe wife. Richard Bachman was Stephen King's pen name at one point in time. Richard Bachman is the pen name's wife. Her name was Inez, and her full name was Claudia Inez Bachman, and I'm sure that was a reference to the Bachmans that don't even exist. So now, on page 826 is the last reference I found, and that says, "I don't shut up, I grow up, and when I look at you, I throw up, and then your mother comes around the corner and licks it up." That is from Stand By Me. I can't remember if it is in the novella The Body, which was the inspiration for the adaptation, Stand By Me. But yeah, I mean, there's that. This book, the expansion of the lore and answering some questions, even though it is not official. I wish they would come out and say, I wish King would come out and say, the boys got it. Because he is obviously a welcome successor to the throne. And now I'm excited for the future, because once we lose King, we haven't completely lost King. If Hill keeps playing in his worlds and expanding on it, we might get more Dark Tower, we might get loads of stuff, and while he is not 100% his father, and he is nowhere near as fast as his father, he's really filling in these shoes, man. Especially with this book. You can read all of these people who are just so excited about this book again, because they read The Fireman and they're like, wait a second, this is just a cover song. This is just fan service. That's all this book is. It's just The Stand with a new coat of paint and about 400 pages shorter. People were pissed when The Fireman came out. But King Sorrow is where it's at. And I do hope King has mentioned that he's going to do one more Holly book, but he's rereading The Outsider to do it. I am wondering if we're going to get more of the eggs. If we're going to get more of the stuff like from If It Bleeds, from The Outsider. I'm hoping it goes supernatural again, because that's where Stephen King shines, in the make-believe. Anytime he gets stuck in the real world, like Never Flinch or Holly, anytime Billy hey Josh, anyways, anytime he gets stuck in the real world, it doesn't work out. Anyways, so yeah, this is sorry, my friend Josh doesn't like when I call it that, so I just want to make that clear. But anyways, I call it Billy Bummers. I usually call it like the trilogy of trash. You have Cell, Dreamcatcher, and From a Buick 8, those kind of things. I'm just goofing. Anyways, so those are all of the connections that I found with 2 read-throughs. I still have to read the text one more time, but my health hasn't been all that great, and I'm trying to get some other stuff read in case shit happens, okay? And even during the shooting of this video, I had at least two moments that really scared me. But I made it through. It is 60 degrees out here in my office, and I'm sweating. I don't know if it's because I'm excited or because of other things, but I'm going to go get myself checked out. If y'all don't hear from me again after 11:18, it is now 11:18 when I'm filming this. If y'all don't hear from me again, I love you, and I appreciate you. And if this is the end, then I'm glad that I spent it with y'all. But until next time, I have been E, you have been you. This has been something brand new. Hopefully I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye!